Welcome to Master the Game. I'm Juice, and today we are going to be talking about Dungeons and Dragons, the new edition, and are people actually switching to the new edition? I have been weighing this for months, even before this was released at Gen Con. I've been going back and forth on if I was going to make the jump. And, I'm just going to be honest, I am still kind of on the fence whether this is going to be my new edition moving forward for good. I am somebody who I like what they did with the 2014 edition. I enjoyed playing it. I enjoyed theory crafting things, building characters, and coming up with my own homebrew stuff. I think it's a really good system. Very easy for me to play. The math comes very naturally for me. I have no problem improvising encounters and making it interesting and giving advice and things like that. So I feel like I got it pinned down pretty well. The new version of it has some changes, but not a ton. And I don't dislike what's in it, but I'm used to the 2014 edition. Now, I had posed a question on Blue Sky about it, and I did get some different feedback from a few different people, but one person in particular, J. William Harrison, he had commented, before that though, I said, tomorrow I think I'll be doing a stream on YouTube talking about my observations around me with people switching or not switching to the latest edition of D&D. What have been your experiences around the new D&D? The reason I was asking this question is because I had seen a review by somebody talking about the new edition of D&D, and they're, I believe, in the New York area. They were talking about how they have seen less people playing D&D in general over the last year or so, it sounded like, but even less people trying the new edition at in-store play. And they're very well versed in how things are at that store. I guess they frequent there. They know a lot of the people there, and not a lot of people there were switching to the new edition. So that's why I posed this question, because it was something I was thinking about. So one of the comments that I had was J. William Harrison said, many people don't upgrade to errata editions. We choose AD&D over AD&D 2E. We choose 3.0 over 3.5, Pathfinder 2E Legacy over Pathfinder 2E Remastered, 5E over Revised 5E. The new supplements can be easily converted if we need more bloat. And so then I actually did respond, because most of the people I've known who play older editions of D&D, they played 3.5, for example, over 3rd edition, or they played Pathfinder over 3rd or 3.5. They played AD&D 2nd edition over AD&D. That was my personal experience with that. So I did say that. And they said not in their experience. 3.5 was too soon after 3.0. So it sounds like maybe people stuck with 3.0 then. And no one wanted to rebuy the core books. He said 2E was played by new players, but those with the original AD&D kept playing that. And honestly, I don't know what the experience was for other people. I did not play Dungeons and Dragons specifically until 2010, and I played AD&D 2nd edition. That's what the first version of D&D I ever played was, and again, that was 2010 because that was what my wife played. My wife had 3rd edition D&D. She has I have the books now. We have 2 books. I don't even know what they are because I've only skimmed through them. But I never did that. I actually played Pathfinder in 2013, the original Pathfinder, and played that up until 5e came out. Didn't try D&D 4th edition, but I did play the D&D Next playtest. And I don't know, I actually knew a lot of people who preferred Pathfinder over 3.0 or 3.5. So I don't know why, again, I wasn't part of 3.0 as it was coming up, or 3.5, but I did read a little bit about some of the things back then. But yeah, so I'm going to read some of these comments. It looks like we have a few people in chat, which is awesome. TP Grant, what's up, Tom? Hope you're doing well. Rivers RPG channel, welcome, buddy. Oh, I'm getting laggy. I'm sorry about that. Probably just poor internet on my part. Grant says, I was in a very similar place. I've tested out this new stuff, and it fits very easily in your 2014 experience and instincts. Okay, cool. Rivers says, they will not switch. Rivers, what is your favorite edition of D&D? What do you currently play the 2014 version? Do you play a different version or just a different game altogether? I'd love to know. I do watch a lot of your unboxing videos and stuff, and I enjoy those. Tom says, it's honestly a tweak and formalizes a lot of third-party and homebrew and not a new edition so much. Yeah, that's the vibe I got reading it. I've obviously reviewed the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Player's Handbook. I don't even think it's a simplification of some stuff. I think in some instances it makes things just a touch less user-friendly for beginners, but not anything too bad. River says, it's good now. 3.5, but I play 5e and run 5e too. Okay, so 3.5 is your edition of choice. That's cool. Okay. Yeah, so I still haven't made a decision yet on where I stand moving forward. I'm kind of excited to see what's going to happen with the monster manual. Obviously you can look in the back of the Player's Handbook and see just some of the examples of beasts, at least, and kind of get an idea for maybe what they're going to do. I saw a lot of speculation up until a couple weeks ago. Then I think I started seeing some more informed hypothesis about the new monster manual. I know there's going to be more monsters, a lot more not original, but like spin-offs of monsters, so you'll have variations of like high and low level of the same type of monster, which I actually think is a good idea. However, D&D, ever since 2014, is very easy for me to tweak up and tweak down monsters. Whether it's taking away attacks, tweaking their AC, or their hit points. I haven't had a lot of issues with that. In fact, I can only think of a couple encounters where I really screwed up, and it wasn't even because I was scaling things. It was because I didn't spend enough time just looking at the stat block, and it doesn't take me long, but I wanted tougher kobolds, so I used like shield maiden kobolds or something. I don't know, specific shield guardian kobolds or something, and they were way too powerful because they had the pack tactics and other things. But yeah, like looking in here though, nothing looks crazy to me. I haven't compared it to the beasts in the original. I'm sure other people have. Maybe I'll do that before the monster manual comes out next month. But I've got one group that's currently using the 2024 base rules. However, we are allowing like some of the racial things from the 2014. So we have a Warforged Druid in my friend group, and that's pretty cool. I also, just because I don't remember if we did or not, I told them that if they didn't want to use the attribute bonuses the way they are with the background, they could spend up to 3 points however they wanted, preferably no more than 2, but I didn't really care if they chose 3. So, for instance, if you decided, I'm going to put 3 into my strength, that wouldn't bother me. To me, that's not going to break your game. You're talking about a +1 difference. Not going to make a huge difference in my opinion in the long run. So, yeah. Tom says, for me, that's my biggest irritation, the staggered releases. Just give it all to us at once, because it's not like the book isn't done. Yes, I agree with you. I actually think I think they would have had better luck if they released all 3 books on the same day, because then people would have jumped in and started playing it much sooner rather than the staggered thing and people not jumping into it at all, I think. So my experience has been different between talking to fellow streamers and content creators as opposed to just casual, I shouldn't even say casual, D&D fans who don't get caught up in trying to create content or release modules, because it's very different groups. So when I've talked to just gamers who really like D&D, who didn't really care about the OGL debacle or any of that, they're not really paying much attention to the AI stuff. A lot of those people that I've talked to at the game store that I do social media for and stuff actually are looking to switch to the new 2024 edition, but are waiting for the monster manual. As opposed to content creators and stuff. A lot of the content creators I talk to have a really bad taste in their mouth with Wizards of the Coast, and a lot of them don't want to move forward. However, are still doing content for it and plan on releasing their own stuff to go along with it and things like that. So it's just kind of an interesting group. I'm in the middle somewhere. I don't know where exactly I stand on it. I wish I had more conviction on it. But if I never got another D&D book, I have plenty that I could enjoy it moving forward. Heck, I just bought these 2 books this week because I still think I'm going to play the 2014 edition. My family game, we're starting a new campaign soon. I think we're going to use 2014. And so I think these are going to come in handy for that. I've got most of the books for the 2014 edition. I will probably try to finish that whole system of all the books, just because that is my favorite edition of D&D. So for me, I just want to finish that out at least at the bare minimum. But there's other games I like. I play other systems. So not a big deal if I never touch or play Dungeons and Dragons ever again. Because there's other games I can play. Tom says, new class features basically make classes more versatile. A lot of non-combat options and abilities add to some martial classes. Yes. So I didn't notice a ton of out-of-combat stuff, but maybe there are. I've made characters I haven't played as a player yet. So maybe I just didn't focus much on it. But, for example, the weapon mastery stuff I think is good. I think, and I've said this in my review, I think they could have gone maybe one step further or done it slightly different. I don't like how you can just swap them out. I think that's kind of silly that one day you know this thing, the next day you just throw that away and swap in a different one. But then later on you can switch it back. Like, I don't know, I don't like that. I do like the Dungeon Master's Guide, though. I like a lot of the things in there. I think it's way better than 2014. And I think it's going to be helpful for new Dungeon Masters. So, yeah. And then I did like the Psionic Warrior for the fighter. Like, I like some of the psionic stuff added in there. And I like that... I thought that was kind of cool. It's different. I like that they gave you something slightly different. So you weren't just getting a rehash of the 2014 book with some tweaks. And again, the beginning of the player's handbook is far more helpful, especially for new players. So great, like, layout and way that they kind of flow into things in these new books compared to the 2014 version. There were some things we noticed in character creation and wording for our session 0 in December. Things like whether you were trained or proficient, and they were using those words almost interchangeably, but it wasn't very obvious. And so I didn't know how to handle when people were like, oh, it says I'm trained in this armor, but I'm proficient in this one. That was a little bit weird. I didn't really like that. So I think some of the consistency of wording definitely could have been better. But we'll see. River says, not sure why they still have just a certain amount of disposable income, and, spacing it out is what a lot of people claimed they wanted and liked in 2014. I remember people they didn't like the module, I think, coming out before the monster manual or something like that. I think that's what it was, because Horde of the Dragon Queen came out before... Was it the monster manual or DM's guide? I don't remember. I remember there was something weird there, but I also know that they had, was it Green Ronin who was writing Horde of the Dragon Queen, or was it Kobold Press? Kobold Press was. So Kobold Press was writing the Horde of the Dragon Queen at the same time the monster manual was being made. And so the balance of encounters and stuff was really bad in Horde of the Dragon Queen. But people I remember a lot of feedback and reviews saying they liked the staggered release because it didn't feel like everything was thrown at you at once. But at the same time, it would also be cool if they just combined the Dungeon Master Guide with the Player's Handbook and called it a core rulebook. Do it like Paizo and Pathfinder. I love that there's a core rulebook, you know, and they obviously Paizo has a lot. I shouldn't say they've done that, and they shouldn't do it like Paizo, because Paizo does have a GM core, Player's core, and a monster manual, but there's a lot more in their Player's Handbook. Like crafting rules, and it's very extensive. Bunch of different magic items and runes and stuff. There's other games out there though that combine their dungeon master stuff with their player stuff and call it a core rulebook. There's no reason D&D couldn't do that. I mean, I know these books are thicker than they used to be, so maybe not, but like they are pretty thick now. They're the biggest Player's Handbook and Dungeon Master Guide they've done to date. And their monster manual is supposed to be the same. It's going to be a bigger book than their previous monster manual. So I don't know. But like, I have a feeling we're not going to truly know if people are jumping to the new edition until the monster manual comes out. I think then, once all three are out, then I think some people are going to make a decision. And I think part of it is going to be looking at the monsters in there and seeing, okay, there's good variety. How about the math of balancing encounters? In 2014, I knew a lot of people who didn't like the fact they couldn't just plug in the math and say, oh, this is a balanced encounter for this party. So I think that is something that will come into play. Excuse me, one second. That is something I think is going to come into play, because enough DMs I knew wrote off the 2014 D&D just because it was not working how they thought. I personally never had a problem with it. In fact, I tried to kind of help them. I had a friend named Andre at the time, and I was like, hey, I know that you want the math to just make sense, but you still have to take into account like monster resistances, vision. Can they see in the dark? Do they have tremor sense? Things like that. Do they have abilities that completely negate that for somebody else, like magical darkness? You know, all of those things. But paladins offering resistance to a whole party on like certain saves, it was massive. So there were certain things I would try to point out to a lot of these newer dungeon masters, or at least new to this type of game that has so many abilities, and they still, a lot of them didn't want to hear it. Again, I know that was, in the grand scheme, it didn't hold back D&D, because D&D these last 11 years has been off the charts, super popular. Ton of new people have come to the hobby, which is, I think, great. And I don't see that changing anytime soon either. Buster TN, I'm assuming that stands for Tennessee. Newbies are, but I doubt it will stick. Too much like a video game. Yeah, you know what? Some people don't like the amount of character options and things like that. I personally do. I'm fine going and playing like Rules Cyclopedia, BX, BECME, and whatever, old school D&D. I'm also fine playing a game like this. I prefer this. I do prefer 2014 D&D over all the other rule sets. Again, I like having character options. I like mechanically having different things, but I also like it. For me, it does sometimes inspire roleplay, as opposed to just having a blank thing that you can do that then you fill around that with roleplay. I do like having these things. I still don't think it plays like a video game, but I know some people do. Long rest, short rest, lots of classes seem the same. That's interesting. I still prefer 3.5. Okay, yeah, I mean, that's fine. The feat chains and stuff is a little bit of a put off for me. Just because, again, the math in the like Pathfinder and in D&D 3.5, when I did look at some of that, it just felt like the numbers would go up just to try and make things different, but it didn't feel different for me in that regard. But I think it's cool. Like video game, like 3.5 to me makes great video games. Like being able to choose feats and, you know, power up your guy and things like that. I actually really like that. 5e with Baldur's Gate actually did a pretty good job too. I know they made a lot of changes, but I think Baldur's Gate 3, that's a fun game. Really good. But yeah, the long rest, short rest stuff, even the encounters per day that they did in the previous edition, or I should say 2014 edition, I got really good at draining players' resources, I think, to make combats more difficult. You know, not offering long rests because they get interrupted and things like that. Now, there's ways that players could still do it. Leomund's tiny hut. They used to be able to mold earth and, you know, let them build a wall of dirt around them so, like, in a cavern, nobody even knows they're there. Or a lot of things like that. So, yeah, there were things they could do to always have max resources. But then, as a DM, you could always throw in time sensitive, you know, things. Oh, you got to get here by this certain date, and you got to save this person before this happened. Like, things like that can go a long way to stifle that. Buster says, what I found about 5e was it's sort of gimmicky. Short rest, reset powers. Seems a lot easier to just blow through a module. Huh, interesting. So, not everything was able to do a short rest and reset their powers, though. Only certain ones. Like, I think clerics didn't reset their stuff on short rest. Fighters did, so obviously they were always getting their action surge and stuff again. But not everything did. I don't think barbarians reset. They only got some of their stuff back. Same thing with wizards. They only got some of their spell slots back. They didn't get it all back. So it just depends. I didn't mind that too much. But yeah, that's why you got to interrupt their rests a little bit. And you don't want to be adversarial. There is a fine line between, like, all right, I'm always going to do this thing and make it hard on them. You kind of got to mix it up. So it's like, yeah, in certain times it makes sense. Other times, maybe it doesn't. Yeah, there's a balancing act. And again, the DM's guide did not help you in the previous one. This new one, it sounds like you're not expected to do the same thing, but I don't know how, because the players are set up so similarly. I think you're still going to have to whittle down some of their things. But maybe the monsters are just incredibly more powerful, and the math makes more sense now. I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting, though. I think this year, we're gonna find out if any of these, I'm gonna call them OGL spin-offs, 5e spin-offs or 5e clones. We're gonna find out if they take off. Whether it's, what is it, Project Black Flag, which is what, Tales of the Valiant now. There's that one. There's Dungeon Coach's system, which that one sounds way too complex for me. Just being honest, that sounds like Pathfinder level complexity with more complexity, and that's not the direction I'd want RPG to go for me. So I don't even know that I'm gonna even look at that one. You've got the Matt Colville one. I think it's, what's that called? Dagger, something like that. Then there's it's like Steel or something. I don't know. One of you knows what it is. If you know what it is, comment what it is. The MCDC one. There's Dagger Heart from Critical Role. I've heard good things about it from people who have actually tried it. Doesn't sound necessarily like a thing I'm into. Then there's one that I backed a Kickstarter for that is made by my friend Mark Tassin from Mechanical Muse. That's Cool Name Goes Here, or Cool Name RPG. Going to be completely free. You can actually download it now. Yeah, Draw Steel is the MCDC one, or MCDM. Yeah. So I might look into that a little, but I also think he's very much into more of like a 3.5 edition type of game from watching like all of his content over the years. So I'm not sure where I'm at there. But I might check it out. But I do know I like the Cool Name Goes Here game. They don't have a name for the system yet. But I do think, if, as somebody who played it at Gen Con, and I actually talked to some people who played it at a local game night here, rave reviews of Cool Name Goes Here. So you can right now download the playtest, but it's going to be completely free when it's released. And the coolest thing about it is that, not to get into a game that's nothing like D&D really, it like D20 is not the resolution mechanic, by the way. But one of the coolest things was, like, you have a specialty or whatever. So like you might be a fire-based mage, we'll just say. But there's nothing on your sheet that says these are the spells you can do or whatever. It's just, if you want to cast a spell, it doesn't matter what the spell is, you have to describe what you want to do. Like, say you're in a cell and you want to break out of the cell, but all you've got is a bucket with a candle. Well, I want to use that handle to mold into a pick. I can do that. I'm going to have to make a check. If that's something that my character would be good at based on other things, then I might get a bonus. And then I roll to see if I can do it. Or maybe I want to just mold earth. I'm a fire mage, so I'm not going to get a bonus for the mold earth part, but because it's spellcasting, I get that bonus. And so then, boom, am I able to mold the earth to make it so the door just falls on the ground? You can do things like that, whatever your imagination can lead to. If the person running the game thinks that it's a very complex or hard spell, then they might make it a more difficult thing to accomplish. So there's, so their DC might be higher or whatever. Super awesome. Had a blast playing that, and I know that that's a game I'm going to play a lot moving forward. So, and it's different than D&D. You can use it for all sorts of stuff. I think their idea is to be modular. It is going to have an open license. No plans of ever changing it. The game is going to be free. All that good stuff. So go check out Mechanical Muse. And then it's CNGH, I think, is the game. You can find the stuff on Facebook. In their Facebook group, I think they have the most recent playtest rules. So that's the best place to get that. Or you can find their Discord as well. I think you can find that through the website. Buster says, medium complexity is fine. The main thing you want is a solid framework and then smooth gameplay. Yeah, I agree with that. I don't want a clunky game. I don't want a game that's the system slows things down. That's the issue for me. When I feel like certain mechanics slow it down for me, that's when I rule it out. TP Grant says, think Wizards maneuvered it very well, bringing third-party content onto D&D Beyond and making that a Roll20 style store. Yeah, but they're also planning on obviously having their own virtual tabletop based on that too. So they're going to try and cut Roll20 out, which I don't think is a good idea. I get that they want to have their own thing and get more people just in their stuff, but yeah, I think that's a mistake, because I don't think most of the people I know, even though I share D&D Beyond with them when they play my campaigns, they don't even want to use D&D Beyond. It's a hassle for a lot of people. So I don't know. And I guess most of those are older. I'm talking 30 and up, 35 and up probably, who don't want to even dabble with the tech. But I don't know. The younger groups always seem fine, and anyone I play with online usually is okay with it. Tales from Elsewhere says Nimble 5e, I think, releases this year. It was kickstarted last year. What's Nimble 5e? I'm not sure of that one. I don't know that one. Yeah, it feels like a lot of people have used the opportunity to release a 5e clone since the OGL debacle. I don't know if that is going to hurt Wizards of the Coast moving forward much, or if it's going to help because there's so many now. It feels difficult to get people to try a new system, especially one that's basically the same as another. I think, obviously, some of these companies who are doing it have a built-in fan base for their other stuff, like Critical Role. People are willing to try it because they're fans of their live play, or people like Dungeon Coach because they're fans of what he used to do with his house rules and stuff, and so they want to try that. And I know that he gave a lot of reviews out and paid a lot of content creators to review his stuff, and so then their audiences also kind of were like, oh, maybe I'll try this one. MCDC or whatever, MCDC. MCDC is Motor City Dan Campbell, and I'm a Lions fan, so sorry about that. MCDM obviously has his core followers that are going to try his thing. Is it too many games hitting a small, group of people that it's not going to work? I don't know. I'm really worried that a lot of these are going to fail, And I'm also worried that the best ones aren't going to necessarily rise out of it. It's going to be the ones that had the biggest machine behind them, the best marketing behind them. Those are the ones that I think will do well. Not sure if links are allowed. Links don't work here. I'm sorry. If you want to post in my Discord, that you can do that too. Discord link should be in the description. Otherwise, you can go to what is my link tree? I don't know what my link tree is. I think it's just master the game. Let's see if I can post a link. masterthegamerpg.com/link-tree. I think that's it. So if you copy that into your browser, you should be able to find my link tree and then click on Discord and you can post links there. TP Grant. No, they have, I think, headed off OGL clones by giving MCDM, Kobold, and the rest a cut of the pie, being able to sell content that plays well with the new VTT they are developing. I didn't realize that they were actually bringing them onto that. That's a mistake to accept that. I wouldn't trust Wizards of the Coast. I wouldn't trust them at all. Because the other thing is Wizards of the Coast also, in their new OGL stuff, I heard something about if you make more than $750,000 a year, then Wizards gets like a cut. So I don't know if that's part of that or it's something different. But yeah. I also thought they were releasing their stuff under a different license. So like Kobold Press, theirs isn't supposed to be under the OGL. It's supposed to be under Orc, isn't it? Did Orc even happen? I don't even remember. And I remember it being announced and people working on it, but I haven't heard that it was released. Maybe it has. Because I know the new Pathfinder was going to be released under Orc as well. A lot of the D&D alternatives don't move the needle enough to warrant their purchase by me. That's completely fair. Buster says, I would agree with that. It's why I have stuck with D&D for so long when it comes to this style of game. There used to be something about total income and then Wizards of the Coast getting unlimited use of the third-party product. That's what it used to be, but I heard that there's a new thing that if you are using their license moving forward, it's like $750K, which is a lot. Like, most publishers are not hitting that number. Kobold Press probably does. They might, maybe not. They might be close. Actually, they probably do hit it because they employ, I think, quite a few people. There's some other games companies that might hit it, but there's not a lot that would hit $750K. But if you ran a Kickstarter, like, there's been some like Dungeon Coach did a lot of money on his Kickstarter. Heck, Nerdarchy a few years ago hit like $250K on a monster book, I think. So, then that's 1/3 of the way there. I don't know if it's $750K a year or just in general. That's the other thing. But I did hear 750 was the number. So I don't know if that's new or different or whatever. But I personally do like trying new systems, especially if somebody else can teach me. That's the big thing. I don't like reading rules to try and learn a system. That is very difficult. I think you have to see it in play sometimes. I am somebody who struggles to read for long periods of time. I love to read, especially gaming stuff. But I am someone who will read a page, realize I started halfway through the page, started thinking about something, and so then I have to reread the whole page again. Because I'll go on a tangent. Just like when I talk, sometimes I'll have a conversation with someone and start talking about this thing over here and have to loop back to the other thing. So I do struggle with that. I think I might have ADHD. TP Grant says, if you go on D&D Beyond, you can now buy Kobold Press and D&D supplements like Tome of Beasts and then have all those stat blocks in the new D&D Beyond tabletop. Oh, okay. I did not realize that. I do have Tome of Beasts and stuff. It was per year, according to Buster. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, I would like to see... So I personally think D&D being a healthy brand is good for the whole industry. Most people who try or play other systems started with D&D. Even people in the last few years who are like jumping on to Shadow Dark or Any of these other games that I've heard of lately that are starting to get popular, most of the people who play those games started with D&D. So I hate the idea of D&D dying, and I know there's a segment of the base who wants to see Wizards of the Coast fail so that D&D can get better in their eyes. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see it at all. I don't want to see any of these companies die. I want to see them thrive. I want to see our player base grow. I just think, as someone who runs games, I think we have to do better about pitching new games to people if we want them to try new games. You know, and that doesn't mean to trash another system. It means talk about the cool stuff of this other system. Tom does a great job of, TP Grant here does a great job of talking about Monster of the Week. He used to talk about that a lot. Used to get a lot of people excited that I knew. Heck, got me excited about it. So definitely think there's an art to trying to convince people to try a new system. And it doesn't start with trashing another system. Most that want it to fail just want it to go back to being a game rather than a political statement. Yes, there's a lot of people who have issues with the political correctness of what they do nowadays. And I think that's why a lot of people are hoping Elon Musk buys it. And I saw a TikTok today where someone was like, we should hope Elon... This is a person, I think, who actually doesn't mind the political correctness of D&D. But he said, yeah, we should hope that Elon Musk does buy D&D. And he went on talking about how Elon Musk would just basically burn it all to the ground and make it worth nothing, and then we could swoop in and buy it for pennies on the dollar. And I was like, no. It's never going to get like that. First of all, if Elon Musk ever bought Dungeons and Dragons, he would never sell it. And if he did run it into the ground, it wouldn't be worth anything, so he definitely wouldn't sell it. He'd just hang on to it as a plaything that he owns. On top of that, you would get a ton of AI garbage that wrote half the stuff, and it would also be stuff that you've basically already done 30 years ago in D&D. I feel like it would be a huge step back system-wise and everything. And my personal opinion is there's plenty of good old school games out there that if you like old school, you can play those. Or you could even go back and play Rules Cyclopedia. You can get the Rules Cyclopedia for about $30, print on demand on Drive-Thru RPG. You've got Goodman Games releasing the old modules, whether it's Temple of Elemental Evil, Into the Borderlands, Castle Amber, all those good things. So again, you can still play that type of game if that's what you want. I think it's okay for the system to evolve. And maybe it's not your thing. Heck, maybe this new edition, this 2024 edition, isn't my thing. I haven't played it enough to decide that. But to just want it your way and then to gatekeep people out, there's a lot of people who don't like that it's getting popular. Because I think it was their thing. They identified with it so hardcore that it was an integral part of who they were. And now that so many other people play it, and it's not how they played it or what their perception of it was, they have a problem with that, and they don't like it. They feel like their identity has been ripped away. I think that's the problem. And I think it's ridiculous. So again, I'm a sports fan. You see people talk about basketball not being as good as it used to be because they take too many three-pointers and, they don't play defense. Basketball's evolved. I like basketball today. I prefer to watch old school basketball a little bit, but I can acknowledge and appreciate the skill that today's players have. It's a different game. It's evolved. Appreciate it for what it is, but if you don't like it, don't watch it. Don't do it. You don't have to trash on it. Don't dump on it. And you can still play the other ones you want, the way you want to. No problem, Tom. It's true. I always thought you did a good job of that. Same thing with Zweihander. You made that interesting. And playing Zweihander with you was a ton of fun. Buster TN says, Wizards of the Coast is the only part of Hasbro that makes money right now. Yeah, that's what I've heard. I think Magic does well, and then obviously D&D. However, I think D&D, and I know because of the new books, they're doing well again, according to sales numbers, supposedly. It sounds like they're trying to bring it all in-house, though, like the video game stuff, rather than license it out. I think they're making a mistake by trying to do that, but who knows? I think it's smart to license your IPs out to people who know what they're doing, and then just focus on what you're good. Yeah, I know Magic is Wizards of the Coast. Yep. Nothing better than being told D&D needs to be played from an anti-colonial point of view. Right. Yeah, I think there's multiple ways to play. However you want to play. If your group's fine, or all orcs are evil, all orcs can be evil. If you want to, have more nuance, then have more nuance. If you want to be more politically correct, go for it. Like, for example, and I know some people hate Session Zero. I think Session Zero is incredibly important, so that everybody at your table is on the same page. That's it. That's the main reason. That's the basics of it. And if you find out someone at your table wants it to be more politically correct, but everybody else doesn't, look what you did. You filtered out a future problem, and both of you can say, yeah, this just isn't going to work. No, nothing against you. That's not how we play or how I want to play. You might want to find a new group. Magic is the big moneymaker. Yeah, I think I saw stats that last quarter that was their big moneymaker last year. But not always. D&D was making a lot of money for them for a while, too. I don't know why I'm coughing. I don't feel sick. I've been coughing, all day for some reason. But yeah, I heard Magic did well last year, but Magic has had its ups and downs as well over the years. Growing the brand makes everybody money and grows the base. I agree with that, and that's what I want to see. I am big on growing community and getting more gamers in this hobby. I love it. That's all I want. I even so my daughter did a D&D club at school, but they didn't help much, and they had a bunch of kids in different groups and stuff, and I loved that she did that. She's 13 now. This was 2 years ago, and she's got friends who like D&D, and so I had talked to her about possibly doing I would be willing to try and help the library get a monthly D&D night going. Instead, I'm working with our local Pride organization to run a quarterly game night, board games and stuff, but maybe I can spin that off into something where we do a tabletop RPG thing. I still think the library would be cool to do that at. I have no issue with being PC if you want to be, but being told by the current owners how bad so many of you are because of color or belief is pathetic. I don't think it's pathetic. I personally think erring on the side of caution is fine. Look, I'm not super sensitive, though. If I want to run a game that's colonial-like and they say that, I don't take that as a personal dig. If you're not a problematic person where at your table people feel offended, I think you should take it with a grain of salt, personally. But I don't think we have to take things personal, when a book puts a statement, or when a company puts a statement out like that, Again, it's easy to lean into stereotypes and say something offensive. You know what I mean? I think that's the thing. And as a white dude, it's also sometimes easy for us to not realize how that affects people who are not white and maybe not a dude. And that doesn't mean that every minority is going to be upset by something you say either, right? Or every oppressed person would be upset by what you say. But there is a segment that would be, right? I don't know. If it's easier to not offend people than it is to. So, I just avoid it, personally. TP Grant. Agree, Juice. I think play the game the way you want to play and your group is on board with. Yeah. I've played stereotypes. It's knowing your audience, right? If I have a group of people and we're all white dudes, you can probably get away with other things that you wouldn't if it was a bunch of women at your table. They might view it differently. Not necessarily because they're women, but because of their life experiences, right? So, I don't know. I have not always felt this way. Like, if you were to ask me 20 years ago what I thought about certain things, it's a whole different mindset. I'm 39 right now. At 20 years old, I probably would have been like, well, it just means they're really bad. It's easier to hate your bad guy if they're saying horrible stuff or whatever, you know? In my home, like most of my games, I do include certain like racism, for example, like I've called elves knife ears and things like that. Like, but up front, I always vet my groups, always. So, other than one time, and that one time that I bothered someone, it wasn't even a thing that was not PC. It was, I didn't realize they had a really bad arachnophobia, and I described some creatures that really impacted them. And so I learned, right? And so then later on, I didn't use those creatures, or I didn't go into detail about them wiggling and doing all sorts of stuff that creeped them out, you know? But yeah. So I honestly, and those people who usually are bothered by the stuff like you were talking about in the books about like, well, avoid colonialism and avoid the stereotypes of orcs being evil or whatever, a lot of those groups who have problems with what's in the new books, most of the people I've talked to don't even, that have problems with those statements, don't even like the new editions of D&D. They prefer like pre-third edition from my experience in talking to them. So yeah. Or like the people who get offended that there's wheelchair options. Like, that's kind of funny to me. I don't know why someone would be offended that that's an option. With that in mind, how would you play with a group of white, male, and female racially diverse people? How could you possibly know every single possible trigger? It's a session 0, Buster. Session 0. So we go over that in all of my session 0s. And again, I know a lot of old school gamers who don't like session 0. They think it's stupid. You know, I've had people comment on my videos talking about it, saying, if you need a session 0, that's a problem. So Buster, we can do this. Like, I could go into detail on this, but it's been done to death over the last couple years. I don't know if you actually want me to weigh in on it or if you're just saying that because you don't understand. But yeah, you're not going to know every single trigger for somebody. You're not. That's why in the session 0, you're going to ask questions like, hey, this is the type of game I run. This is the stuff that might happen. For instance, I remember when I was younger, not in like 2010, but like when I played in other games or I'd watch people play D&D, it was a very common trope to rescue the naked lady who just escaped a bunch of orcs. And it was implied that they were raped, right? That was a thing I saw time and again. Heck, there's a ton of miniatures that imply that a woman was raped as she's tied up naked. There's a ton of miniatures out there like that. So again, that's something that was more common back then. I'm seeing it less and less now. I personally do not include rape in my games. I say that up front. I personally mention that, hey, if there's a scene that gets too, like, where you want it to, like, go into sex, we are fading to black. I'm not role-playing that with you guys. You know, I am very clear with what I do at my table. If I am triggered, I will say something. There are also people that use tools like an X card. There's lines and veils. There's one of the cool things that I've also experienced talking to other people. They will have a document, so you can also post in it anonymously. Google Doc that anybody in your group has access to. They can go in and type their triggers and maybe you don't know. Maybe there's nothing on that session 1, but at session 1 something happens. They weren't comfortable saying it. They go home, think about it. So then they post in that doc, hey, I'm not cool with racism expressed in a game, or slavery, or torture, or abusing kids, or certain phobias that they have. And they just list the things. You're supposed to review that doc right before the next session. Real simple. I review, when I do this with groups, I review it before I prep, and then I review it before the first session. And if something is new, I bring it up with the whole group, like, hey, just so you guys know, in this document, this is something that came up. Or if somebody reaches out to me before that next session, hey, I didn't like that this person was really like going in on this thing. Can you address that with them? So I address it. It's really simple. I'm an adult. I talk things out. It's not that hard. And I do play with mixed groups. I've played with... So most of my home groups in the past have been about 50-50 men to women. I've played with trans people, lots of LGBTQ people. I've played with plenty of minorities, racially diverse people. Online, I play with racially diverse people. So yeah, I mean, that's not a thing that's an issue for me. And again, them just being those things is not necessarily gonna say they're triggered. I've met, I have a person I have played with, a black person that has no issue with fantasy racism, like you point out here, but that doesn't mean all minorities are cool with that. You know what I mean? So yeah. TP Grant, the TT RPG community went through a bad time, especially online, from like 2019, 2021, where things were very confrontational, and I think things have cooled off. Buster says, why is it wrong for stereotyping orcs as evil when they are in fact a fantasy creature? So again, these things have been addressed though. Like, so orcs, a lot of the original orc stuff comes from things that were stereotyped off of real cultures, calling them savages and things like that. We in America know that Native Americans were referred to as savages. This was a huge thing. It's also part of the propaganda that we still kind of hear today in America. So, stuff like that is kind of transcended, but just the words and the things they use kind of make those connections, That's all. Tom says, talk to them. I have a very diverse Zweihander group right now, and we play in the Warhammer world, which is a very old school setting, and we all got on the same page. Yeah, exactly. I'm running a pretty dark game, and we were having a good time. And see, I like to run darker games too. I like to run a little bit more serious tones of games. I love violence and gore in my games. I've played with people that didn't want a ton of gory details, so I've toned that back with some groups. Buster says, I have played since the 70s. Can't say I have ever played in a rape scene. Yeah, that's fine. I'm not saying played the rape scene out. I'm saying, like, if you look at even old modules, like, why are the women, like, naked, chained to a wall in certain ones? You know what I mean? That's all. I used to see it a lot more, is what I'm getting at. Played with men, women, black, white, Mexican, Asian, gay, etc. And never had anybody need a session 0. Do you know that, though? Like, I know you say you never needed one, but how do you know that? Like, I've played with groups where I was just a player, and players talked about how horrible the DM was. That I've experienced a lot. Like, I can't believe he said that thing. And then because they can't find another group, they continue to play with that group. I've experienced that many times. Just because you think from your side. Yeah, see, nobody ever quit. That's not an indicator, though. I can attest to that not being an indicator. I've played in bad groups for long periods of time. I won't do it now. My time's too valuable. But I used to. I used to play with groups I had problems with. And I used to bite my tongue because I didn't want to create issues. And I appreciated that they were investing their time, but I wasn't always having fun, or I didn't like some of the stuff that came up. Tom says, I think internet discourse creates a feeling that people are sitting around in a game waiting to be offended, and it's really not how it is. People play games to have fun. I agree. And so some of my favorite stuff does touch on morally gray subjects. It can be a fine tool if you want to have racism or these other things. It does really emphasize this dude is bad, or this group of people, these bandits are bad people. And it's then it can be, for some people, more satisfying to then kill them off or to stop them or whatever. Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. Like I've said, I don't have a problem playing around with that stuff. I do when it comes to sex scenes. That's where or lots of flirting or whatever. I don't want to role play with my group that way. And my wife plays in my games. I don't even want to role play with her at the table like that. That's just not a thing that I enjoy. Maybe some of my past experiences are part of it, but I don't want to dabble with it. I enjoy more of the adventure side and things like that. Exploration and combat and heroic stuff. That's the stuff I prefer rather than romance in my games. And that's the thing. Like, some people really enjoy role-playing romance. And yes, they still want to do these other things, but they also want their characters to evolve and maybe one day have a love interest and stuff like that. I don't personally want that. So Tom says, my first D&D was terrible. GM wasn't good. Group dynamics were bad. We played for years because we wanted to play D&D and didn't know we had other options. Yes, I totally get that. Like, I've played with groups where I realized we all wanted completely different things and we couldn't find middle ground. I've done that both as a player, which was horrible, where I just kind of checked out, and I still played and did the stuff in combat, but I didn't like contribute well. So then I probably seemed like a horrible player to them. But then I also had issues with DMs that also didn't run what like it seemed like the group wanted. There's tons of horror stories out there. So, and I've played in games where it's funny. Like I said earlier, there have been games where after a session, everybody's freaking talking about how great the session was, right? And the DM says, well, is there anything I could have done better or whatever? And everyone's like, no, it was great. And then like later that night in a group message on Facebook or whatever, people are like, ooh, that was pretty bad, huh? There's no way it's going to get better. Like, a lot of trash talk about how poor the game was. And that's horrible. And it's like, and it's not, I'm probably exaggerating it a bit, but there were issues with those games. And so people would talk about it. So I try not, even when I do have a lot of fun, I try not to like get too high and excited and be like, oh my gosh, this was such a great game. But I also try not, like when I'm in those situations now where someone didn't enjoy it, I try not to also be like, yeah, it was horrible or this or that. I try to sit in the middle and, I also try not to judge anyone by one session either. Because I've had some campaigns where it was like, you played a couple sessions that were poor, but then like once you got into a certain part, then it got better. Like part of it's a feeling out a new group or whatever. So it depends. But that's the session 0. If you've been playing with the same group for 20 years, you already know each other, you know what you want and what you don't want. Sure, a session 0 is unnecessary. Or maybe you're really good at vetting your players and okay, this is the type of campaign I'm running, this is what I want, this is what I don't want, yada, yada, yada. What do you think? And you tell all your players. That's great. The one thing that's missing there is those other players don't get a chance to vet each other. And so they might be fine with what you want to do, but they might not be cool with what another character at the table is going to do. So again, I think a session 0, when you've never played with this group or very minimally played with them, is important. So I always do it. It's basically character creation, right? And then I ask my players what they hope to get out of the campaign, what they hope their characters can kind of go through. Maybe it's like, oh, I'm a fighter, but hey, it'd be really cool if we fought these types of monsters. So for example, I have a new campaign starting up where the players told me they really wanted to do some stuff with aberrations, and I love that. They gave me something that I can now use for an upcoming game. And I'm really looking forward to that. Because it wasn't where I was going to go with the campaign until they said that. I've had the same thing done with like, oh, I want, fiends and devils and all this stuff. Cool. I've had times where players are like, I really want to handle some dragons. That would be a lot of fun for us. Okay, cool. So I do think session 0 is great, and not just for safety tools. I think it's great for making sure everybody has a great time. As the dungeon master or game master, you kind of craft out everything and you can do what you want, but it's so much cooler when you give the players what they want to sometimes, right? If you're just telling your story all the time and only doing what you want to do, you know, you're going to miss the mark sometimes. It's kind of like watching TV shows. Like, you might be watching a fantasy TV show that is dealing with cultists and stuff early on, and everyone's like, oh, this is a great TV show to watch, right? And they start watching it. Oh, and they're fighting dragons. Awesome. And then all of a sudden, for a couple sessions, it's, you know, ship combat and seafaring, and you're like, oof, I don't want this. And so then, like, you go through 3 episodes not giving a crap about your show because it took a left turn. This is stuff that comes up in session 0, you know? Now, I know as a game master, you can also just go where your players go as like a sandbox and adapt to what they've already chose anyway. And that's cool. Like, but again, if you get on the same page early on, it's easier. That's all. And it's just communication. That's what it comes down to. So, yeah. Anyways, that was a long kind of session 0 rant there. But maybe I'll do another video on that some other time. But I don't know. I've talked about session 0 many times. I'm sure I will many more times. But yeah. So I don't know. I've pretty much talked this to death. Bringing it back, though, I am hoping with the new monster manual, things will become more clear to me. I also think I'll have 1 or 2 sessions before that comes out of 2024 D&D. So I should also get more familiar with this to see if it's the system for me or not. Ultimately, I just like playing games with my friends. And that's what it comes down to. I have a blast with that. I play games with my patrons as well. So if you want to become a patron, you can head on over to Patreon, find me, Master the Game. You know, I still need to update all that, but we've got a Sunday campaign, and occasionally I do one-shots. I haven't done one in a long time, but I usually do one-shots of games like, you know, Palladium, Heroes Unlimited, Rifts, but I do it kind of like my own homebrew version. I do all sorts of other stuff like that. Warren Rowling says, my players wanted 2024, so I did it. The problem is Roll20 2024 is not ready for public use. Do not pay for it. Yes, I have no intention of jumping into any of their VTT stuff anytime soon, at least. That's not a thing I'm interested in. I don't know. Maybe we'll see if something, you know, crazy happens, but I'm not worried about their virtual tabletop right now. I actually think Dungeons and Dragons with 2014 edition and this new one should be fine for Theater of the Mind as well. So I'm not even worried about a virtual tabletop for D&D. Yeah, I'd rather just wing it. Like, oh yeah, you're close enough to hit it, or yeah, you could flank it, or whatever you want to do. Yeah, let's do it. I think it works well for this edition for me. Now, I know not everybody agrees with that. In person, I prefer miniatures and battle maps. So yeah, but it's going to be interesting. I don't know. I know a lot of people were real excited about the being able to drink a potion as a bonus action. I did not allow that house rule before. Not because it was game breaking, just because there were class abilities that was what you got at certain levels. And so I didn't want to negate that for a class, you know? So I always didn't have that as the rule. But now I'm totally cool with it. So yeah, it's going to come down to next month though for me. I really think it is. So I'll still talk about some of the new stuff, some of the new books coming out. I'll do some reviews, do more in-depth reviews. I think I might even start doing some class guides on the channel, talking about maybe some different builds, probably starting in March. So March is when you'll probably see a lot more content from me. Mondays, so tonight, starting probably in March, I'm going to start doing some more mapping streams using Incarnate. Probably just hop on and do that, and you guys can weigh in on things, give me some input, maybe help me make, you know, things a certain way. I think I'm going to stream that here, not on Twitch. I don't do much on Twitch, but maybe I'll start playing some video games on Twitch as well, because I like playing video games. And then I've got our Patrons game on Sunday nights, so if you want to watch those, subscribe, check back on Sundays. We don't play every Sunday. It's every other. And I think the next one is coming up on the 19th. Yes, so the 19th. So in 2 weeks. And that is going to take place in the Valkar Kingdom region, which is where TP Grant played and actually helped come up with some of the lore for that part of my world. So, or inspired a lot of stuff. So Sunday evenings, starting on the 19th, every other Sunday, we will be playing that. On the off Sundays, I do think I'm going to play video games on Twitch or maybe even here. So if that sounds like something you want to see, let me know. Yeah, so subscribe, give us a like, and I will see you guys next time. This was Master the Game. I am Juice. Game on.